Good old democracy. The wonderful thing that keeps our society functioning without any problems at all. Brings absolute harmony to society. You never have people argue anymore. They just say, well, we'll take a vote. And whatever the majority decides will be the way the world operates, and everyone will be happy. Bullshit. Kind of coming to light. Somebody made an interesting comment, because I've been bashing democracy over Twitter the last couple days. And somebody made an interesting point that you start out with a small set of rules, and because it's a democracy, somebody who's not happy with those rules will want to change them and say, hey, we need a new rule. I'm not being treated fairly, we need a new rule. That guy's having too much success and I'm not, gotta make a new rule. That guy's oppressing me, gotta make a new rule. And most of the new rules, should I say most? Let me just say some. Some of the new rules make a lot of sense, and they are with good intent to help somebody who's being oppressed. But what you end up with is more and more and more rules. They never backtrack. They never eliminate the rules. They always create more. And a lot of them are malicious to begin with. They're going to steal from somebody to pay for some pet project. But somebody's going to benefit from that pet project, so they vote for it or they support it. Now, a lot of people will say we don't even have a democracy, or at least we don't have a direct democracy. And a direct democracy would be better because right now we just vote for representatives, and representatives vote for laws. And of course, all of those representatives are corrupt. Well, my representative's not corrupt. All of yours are corrupt. Everybody else's representative is corrupt. Mine is great. I'm just kidding. Mine's terrible too. But that's what people say. So, that's an interesting point. But at the same time, I don't think that's really true. I don't think a direct democracy would fix this problem because, think about it. You have a lot of these disaster bills. I mean, yes, we don't get to vote on them, but in general, they know they have to sell them to us as something that's going to be good for us. You look at the bailout bill. That was never about us. $600, big fucking deal. That was never about us. This economic relief, whatever. It was never about us. It was about all the money they're going to give to all these banks and corporations and foreign countries and everything else. That's what it was about. I mean, adding up all the money that came to us, and I shouldn't say to us because I'm not one of them. I don't get any of that money. Nor should I. Nor do I want it. All of the money that went to you guys added up, made up just a small fraction of what went to corporations and foreign governments. And the only reason they gave us anything, I mean, think about it. Couldn't they have just passed that bill? I mean, we didn't get to vote on it. Couldn't they just pass that bill without giving us anything? They could have, but they still got to keep us happy, right? Because ultimately, they are representatives. They need to come back to town. Well, if it wasn't for me, you wouldn't have gotten that $600. They were just going to give all that money away to everybody else. Right? So, even though we don't have a direct democracy, those shit bills are still being positioned in a way that if we did have a direct democracy, they'd probably still pass. Because a lot of people are going to say, oh, I mean, it's easy to talk shit, right? It's easy for libertarians and even conservatives to say, oh, they're giving away free money, that's a terrible idea. But then, when the check comes, they don't have too much of a problem depositing it. And so, if they were asked to vote on it, Would they really vote against it? Or would they say, man, you know what? Those bastards, they've been taking my money all year. This is a chance for me to get some of it back. And here's the interesting thing. Remember how it was passed? The last one, it was given to them like, I think 12 hours before the vote, or like 4 hours before the vote. And it was like 50,000 pages, so nobody could have read it. And they still voted on it. You don't think they would do the same to us? You don't think they would say, okay, guys, on Friday, we're going to have a vote. Make sure you show up for the vote. And they don't release the bill until Friday morning. And so, let's say Friday morning, you go to work, you take your lunch break, you go vote. You haven't seen all the news yet about all the bad things that are in there, or maybe nobody's had a chance to comb through those bad things yet. A direct democracy wouldn't really fix any of these problems. So we have to go back to democracy itself. Is democracy a great idea? Well, we're told democracy is the opposite of a dictatorship, and a dictatorship is really a terrible idea. But is this a false dichotomy? Because ultimately, whether you're choosing democracy or dictatorship, and I guess nobody really chooses dictatorship, that's chosen for you. Whether you're choosing one or the other, whether you have one or the other, you still have a list of rules that everybody must conform to, whether they like them or not. And that's kind of the big problem with government in general, even if you have a democracy. And I know a lot of people are like, yeah, but this is the only fair way to do it, because, you know, if we didn't have that, there would be all kinds of people taking advantage and doing this and doing that. Well, we have a democracy, and that hasn't solved that problem. People are still taking advantage. People are still robbing us. They're just using the government to do it now. Now it's only a small group of privileged elite who get to do it, but they get to do it on a massive scale. So I think probably one of the most important things to say about this is the world is not perfect. That's something that, man, when I was a kid in those government indoctrination camps, and they were telling me how great America is and how great democracy is, and yeah, pray to the flag and worship the state, and the police will keep you safe and all this other stuff. They had me convinced. I talked about brainwashing the other day. They had me brainwashed. They had me convinced that we had the perfect system. America was the perfect place. Nothing bad was ever going to happen, because everything was just so perfect. We had this perfect system of democracy. We had this perfect system of government divided into two houses. We had the perfect system of the government divided into three branches. We had a separation of church and state. We had the Bill of Rights. We had all these amazing things which were going to make the world perfect. But that's just a fantasy. That, if anything, is utopian. I know anarchists and libertarians always get accused of being utopian because, oh yeah, you're just dreaming of some utopia. No, I think libertarians, I mean, yeah, there's probably a lot of them that are delusional, but I think a lot of them recognize that a world without government is not going to be perfect. And that's not really the argument. The argument is that the world is never going to be perfect, even with democracy, even with the most perfect government. Because the beautiful thing about freedom is that people get to have different beliefs, and they get to have different lifestyles. They get to do things differently. And the problem with democracy is that it takes that away. It says everybody must conform. So, the false dichotomy, or I guess the illusion, is that the world can be perfect if only we get the right kind of government. And I think that's a lie. And I think one of the biggest things we need to realize is that the world is not perfect and it's never going to be. And we've got to work with what we've got. And that's not a bad thing. I mean, no pain, no gain, right? I mean, if life was so perfect, think about this. If life was so perfect that you didn't need to work, that all your food was free, you didn't need to do anything, what would you do with your life? You could sit around and play video games all day. Oh, but wait. Would you play easy video games? Like the kind where you could just press a button and poof, you win? No. You play difficult video games. You challenge yourself. What else would you do? I mean, think about that, really. And you can argue, like, it's much easier to play a difficult video game than it is to play a difficult life where you have to fight for food, where your survival's on the line. Yeah, maybe. But the point is, there's still struggle. And I'm not saying we should live in a world where everybody's struggling to survive, especially when they're struggling to survive because somebody else did something to benefit themselves that made it more difficult for everybody else. Definitely not advocating that. But I am saying we should forget this illusion that life is supposed to be perfect. We should understand that there are going to be people that have disagreements in ideologies and philosophies and anything else. And they might live right next door to us. And that's just part of life. That's just something we have to deal with. That doesn't mean we have to go to war with everybody. Doesn't mean we have to hate everybody. It just means we don't have to be best friends with everybody. It just means we have to try to resolve conflicts peacefully, de-escalate instead of escalate. And most importantly, it means we should not force whatever we think the best way of living is on somebody else. Because the second we start doing that is the second we give them the authority to do it to us. And who knows? Your ideal set of rules might put you in a minority. And if they put you in a minority, that means that democracy is able to take it away from you. And a lot of people will say things like, there are two types of people in this world. You ever hear that? And then it's followed by people who do this and people who do that. Well, that's a false dichotomy because, yes, you can take one issue and draw a line in the sand and people will have to get to one side or the other. And there may be more people on one side than there are on the other side, but once you've divided people that way, pick another issue. You drew a line this way, now draw a line this way with another issue. Now people are divided. Maybe it's 25% all around. And then divided even further and divided even further. The truth is, there aren't two kinds of people in this world. There are over 7 billion kinds of people in this world. We're all extremely unique. We are all a single person minority. We don't agree with everything on anybody, take your best friend. I'm sure you have something you can disagree on with your best friend or your closest ideological clone. Something you disagree with, which means you're not the same, which means you're a minority to some degree. And sure, maybe you can win on certain topics, but that means that you're a minority on other topics. And when you're a minority, under a democracy, people can and will take your rights away. And so democracy is extremely dangerous. And it's even more so dangerous because, not just because it can do that, but because of the illusion, or maybe the illusion itself is the danger, the illusion of the utopia that democracy is supposed to be creating. That illusion is extremely dangerous because that's when our guard comes down and we allow these things to happen. Alright guys, put that in your pipe and smoke it. I'll catch you later. Taxation is theft.